Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Trying to pump myself up. So I'm Pini Yakuel. I'm the founder and CEO of Optimove. It's great to be here again. I want to start with some thank yous. Thank the marketing team for putting this together. This is an amazing show. It's our 8th Optimove Connect. We had 5 in Israel and 3 in London now. And it's really exciting. It's an opportunity for us as a community to get together, to share ideas with peers, with friends, to have the physical, right? The physical thing. I remember going to shows for the first time. Always feels like an intervenal infusion of information packed into 2 days, so you can get a lot done and basically sharp up your skills. So this is our community. I want to mention that a lot of our peers and friends from Israel were not able to make it because of the conflict in the Middle East, and we're hoping it's going to end soon. So yeah, let's get started. My session is again called Positionless Marketing, Why the Future Belongs to Versatile Marketers. And it's really exciting this year because actually it's a trilogy. So today I'm going to do Rocky 3. So the beginning, 2024, which was exactly 2 years ago here in London at Optimove Connect, I stood on the stage with an idea. The idea was about something I took from basketball, which is a field I really, really love. And it was kind of like a playful idea for a keynote. And then we said, wait, I think we got something here. A year later, again at Optimove Connect, we started to spark a movement around the notion of positionless marketing. And it got more mature. We did some more research, some more studies, things of that nature. And 6 months after that, we actually adopted our entire branding around positionless marketing, our entire identity. And today, in 2026, it becomes a manifesto. It actually becomes a book, which I have here as well. I can put it like this, like Simba in Lion King. So this year we have a book which I wrote, and I decided to write this book because as we went through this process and the ideas started to mature and shape in our heads, we figured that in this AI world, we should put it together as a manifesto. And this is the book. But when I began writing this book, I thought I was writing a management book. So I had kind of like, I'm an engineer by trade. I had my chapters in line. I had a chapter about basketball. I had a chapter about assembly lines. I had a chapter about AI. I was covering the history of assembly lines. And I was going at it, of course, assisting my good friend ChatGPT. And I was writing it. And at some point, something didn't feel right. So I'm lucky enough to have a wife who's a novelist, right? So her profession is writing. So I was like, hey, can you take a look at my book? And then she did. And she read the draft and she said, it's very, 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 very boring. She's like, nobody, I don't care if marketers need this to be better at their jobs. They're never going to read it. Nobody in their right mind would read it. And that's the story of how I got divorced. No, I'm kidding. I can take criticism, not a problem. Actually, what I did is I told her, hey, would you mind editing this book for me? And she said yes. So she said yes. This is her and us working from our home office. And she's helping me, working on the book, editing the book. So when I brought her in, the first thing she did, obviously, she read the draft and she started interviewing me because she doesn't understand anything. She's an artist. She doesn't understand anything about business, about marketing. Some of the conversations are actually really funny. And she's kind of like interviewing me. And then she came back and she said, look, you've been thinking about this idea for a long, long time, even before the first Optimove Connect. Like, you've been thinking about this notion of versatility, and if one person can do many things, going a lot back in time. So why don't we make it like a thinking journey where we go through how you thought about this concept in your head over time, and we'll add some memoir elements. Memoir is kind of like memories, right, from my journey. So that's what we did. And we started writing the book. And I'm gonna share it with you today. So let's dive into the book. I have the book here, so if I forget something, I can probably not gonna find it. But so let's dive into the book. And today, when I'm gonna present I'm going to bring this book alive for you. I'm not going to tell you the whole book, but I'm going to bring it alive for you, and I'm going to share the main takeaways from the book with some of my stories as an entrepreneur, with my journey in Optimove. And what I've done is I've used direct quotes from the book, very, very short quotes that can basically help us spark a discussion on what went on behind it. So let's get started. That night, it clicked. Basketball itself had transformed. So this is basically the year's 2020, COVID. I'm back in Tel Aviv. I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the 2020 NBA Finals, Game 5, Miami Heat versus the Lakers, and Jimmy Butler is putting on a show of versatility. This guy is everywhere. And as I'm watching the game, I hadn't watched basketball for 20 years at the time. I'm like, wow, it's a completely different game. It's not the same as I remember. There's no, like, the positions are all whack. There's no rigid functions. The game is flowing. Centers are shooting three-pointers. Like, what's going on? So to me, it was my first introduction to positionless basketball, like a new form of basketball that evolved over time, but I just missed it. So I'm watching this game, and I'm thinking about the game of basketball. Monday morning, I go to the office, and I'm on a call with a client who's a little bit upset. And the client says, look, you got all these onboarding calls with 7 people from your side. Every person knows a tiny bit about the project. Nobody sees the whole picture. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's how you do when you have to scale. You divide it into specialties, and each person knows one thing. This guy knows the data, and this guy knows this. But somewhere in my head, this was the moment where I thought something could shift. Something isn't working right. This is how we start the book. It's kind of like a cinematic type of a scene. Once you realize how fun it is to know things, you will always seek more of it. So now we go back in time, and this is something that my father used to tell me when I was a child. My father wanted to be an architect. So he studied architecture, and then he dropped out 2 years in because he had to provide for his family. At the time, Israel was very poor. He had to provide for his family. And he always felt like he was much more talented than all of those architects that had a degree. He carried that sense of loss, that not achieving an education. So he always pushed me to be curious, to love knowledge, to basically increase my range, be more versatile. So that was kind of like in my childhood. Rosh Gadol, literally a big head. Not ego, but the ability to think beyond what was explicitly asked. So if there's any Israelis here, they know it immediately. Rosh Gadol means big head, and it's something that when you are a soldier in the Israeli army, this is something you hear all the time from day one. This is the expectation. If you're given a task, you're expected to understand the task and go beyond what the task specifies. So if you're given to do X and you realize along the way that maybe you need to do Y as well, that's your job. Your job is to expand, is not to be a robot that takes an order and does only that. And this is kind of like the culture we grow up in, right? And you would expect the biggest organization in Israel is an organization of hundreds of thousands of people to have rigid structures and systems and all of those things. But actually in that organization, that's where things are, like the notion of Rosh Gadol is very, very important. So this is the culture I come from. It was known as the degree for people who didn't yet know what they wanted to be when they grew up. So then I need to study something, right? So everybody's talking about different things, and this new degree called industrial engineering is starting to trend. It's a general purpose engineering, and graduates of that degree tend to be Swiss Army knives. They can become many different things. At Optimove at the beginning, 70% of the employees were industrial engineers. Guess what? I'm an industrial engineer. Guess what? Mosh, that just spoke before me, he's running sales at Optimove. He's an industrial engineer. Guess what? Shai, who's going to come up after me, SVP of product, he's an industrial engineer. So this is and at the beginning, all of Optimove is built with those people who are kind of like multi-purpose engineers. Then when I start to hire in cities like London and New York, and I look for these types of people, recruiters are puzzled. So this degree does exist in the UK and America, but it's very much rare. It's esoteric. Not many people choose it. In Israel, it's in the top 3. Culture. The result is speed. Then I started Optimove. Optimove is a startup. So when you start a startup, actually every team member, the founders and early employees, they all wear many hats, right? They do a lot of things. You do sales, you do marketing, you do tech, you spec out product specs, you do everything you can to push the startup forward. There's a ton of flow. In the same day, you talk about sales, marketing, customer feedback. It all lives in the same conversation. There's no handoffs, there's no waiting. Everything is super, super fast, right? That's a secret power of startups. Startups are very fast because, and you hire employees for range. You don't hire somebody who does only one thing. You hire people that can do a lot of things. That's something that all startups have. They have speed. My instinct was simple. If you want to build something properly, you need time. So at the time in Israel, all of the people would go to VCs, and this notion that building a company is a little bit like an extreme sports. We almost lost the company at the end of that quarter. We had money for 2 more months, and then we signed this big client and we saved the company. There's all this kind of like heroics, all of these stories. I never quite understood that. And for me, in order to get time, what I did was I was a university professor at the time, and a new college would open up. So I went to that college and I offered myself as a professor in the course Methods Engineering, and I landed a gig where I had 6 consecutive classes in the same day, and I worked 1 day a week, and I earned a paycheck. So Optimove, young Optimove at the beginning, didn't have to pay me anything. I had time. I had 4, 5, 6 weeks, apart from this 1 day, to work on Optimove. And that's how I bought time, and that's what created the bootstrapping DNA, which is a specific framework of working. It's a framework where you're very close to customers. You're not presenting stories and promises to VCs and telling them that in 2 years the world's going to go here or there. You're just basically very close to reality. No external voice that says, you're right. One of the hardest things of bootstrapping is not the idea of not having money. It's the idea that for years and years you build and nobody tells you you're on the right track. Nobody gives you validation. You don't have that moment where you go to your grandma and say, hey, grandma, I raised $5 million. Somebody believes in me. You do that when you bootstrap, but only 7 years after. So the notion of not having validation is very difficult emotionally for a bootstrap startup. And that difficulty requires to have versatility, emotional versatility. It requires range. I didn't always like it, but I needed those customers. So when you bootstrap, the only source of money is customers. If you have a bad fit customer, you still need their money, so you take it in. If you are in a wrong situation or you overpromise something, you don't have $5 million in the bank. We can say, okay, let's just fix this thing and let's just get out of this so we can work on the next thing. You have to take it in, and again, it requires grit. It requires resilience when you bootstrap, right? You don't have room for error. I think what sums it up is chi va piano va sano, va lontano. Do we have Italians in the crowd? Not even one Italian? Yes, okay. Okay, Italians, good. So my grandmother, actually, she was from Saloniki in Greece, and she studied in an Italian school, so she knew Italian. And she would tell me this saying, it means he who walks slowly walks safely and walks far. And this basically summarized the idea of building as a bootstrap, right? You're very close to customers, you do things at pace, you win time, and you use time to build something properly from the ground up. August 2010, the Wall Street Journal, innovative Israel failing to grow high-tech startups. So when I start Optimove, I start to read the economic newspapers because I figure, hey, I need to skill up and understand what's going on in the world in terms of business, right? I'm young at the time, I don't have a clue about anything. And all of the economic newspapers are about the miracle of Israeli technology. Look at companies like ICQ and Checkpoint at the time, and cybersecurity powerhouses, and all of those people from the army units that know a lot about tech. And there's a book that goes out, a book called Startup Nation. And Startup Nation covers why Israel is a miracle in the sense that it's such a tiny company and it can export so much technology. And he talks about it's because it's an immigrant society, so people take risks, and you got an army with technology, and you got a non-hierarchical structure and critical thinking and fostering leadership at a young age. So it covers all of those things, but then came the criticism. The criticism said that Israel is very good at creating like lab projects, and then a big American company comes along and buys it for $10 million or $20 million, and they get the juice, they get the tech. So the criticism was like, hey, you're very good at coming up with ideas and building something from scratch, but you don't know how to scale stuff. Like, you don't know how to grow it. And I read that as a young founder, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to build it properly. I'm going to build a company that can grow. So this is kind of like voices I'm hearing at the time. I want to be a part of it. So if you want to build something that can grow, if you want to study scale, why not go to the place that assumes scale as a default? And where is that place? The song, right? New York. So I move my family to New York, and we go to New York to start Optimove New York, Optimove America, and that was 2016. And we go there to study scale and understand how to basically get away from those initial instincts of building things with a small team where there's no roles and no positions and everybody's doing everything, to understand how the Americans do it. How are they building those monstrous companies? I kept telling her, he can't help you, look for our server. So this is something I used to tell my wife when we were eating at a restaurant in New York. And even after living in New York for 3.5 years, she still couldn't understand the different operating system of a restaurant in America as compared to a restaurant in Europe. In America, they slice it up for tiny little rolls. So she would ask the busboy for another margarita. And the busboy often didn't even speak Spanish, was in the middle of clearing the table and having a lot of dirty plates, and she would submit the request at exactly that second. And it never quite compiled. Like I told him, you look for the waitress, like he's not the guy. But this shows you an operating system, right? In America, there's even a person that's pouring water all the time, right? Because they don't want you being upset about not having water. So there's somebody that circles the restaurant and just pours water. Even when you have a lot of water, he taps, right, tops you up. In Europe, you got one person, they sit you down, they take your order, they clean the table, and when there's spare time, they stack the pantry in the back. And it's like, where are they? And it's like, what? It's much more efficient, different structure, right? But maybe the service is not as good. So in America, when you're taught, when you think about scale, think about how do you actually scale something, right? So the notion of scaling is saying a large system would not tolerate errors as much as a small system. A large system would want much more quality. How do you get more quality? You take a piece of work and you start to break it down to small pieces, and each person would do a much smaller piece. Then they do it again and again and again and again. They get professional at it, they make less mistakes, right? That's the notion of specialization. Specialization gives us, it minimizes variability. So it minimizes the notion that one time I'm going to do it like this, and then the other time I'm going to do it differently. So you minimize variability, and that's how you achieve scale. And that's what America taught me. And that's what I did at Optimove. So at the beginning, we have one guy, an industrial engineer. We call him an analyst, or a girl, an analyst. And the analyst is doing everything. And then there's a lot of new customers, and you need to do data QA. So somebody said, hey, why don't we specify a new role for a QA person for all the new clients? So we put a QA person there, and all of a sudden, that person gets much more professional. QA gets better. Customers are happy. You unlock growth. Great, you're scaling the business. But imagine you do it again and again and again and again and again on every tiny piece of the business. Something probably gets lost, right? I was sitting on the couch in my psychiatrist's office. She looked at me for a long moment and said quietly, "You're in dysphoria." So I asked her, "What is dysphoria?" And she told me that's the opposite of euphoria. It's a real word, by the way. It's a shrink word. So it means that you're not depressed. You're functioning. It's not like you sleep all day and you can't get out of bed, but you're kind of sad. And that was me in 2019, back in Israel after New York, after we had a really bad year. Optimove grew very fast at the beginning, and in 2019, it was the year in which we slowed down. A lot of things in the company broke. You know, the success model broke, this model broke, some pieces of the technology broke. Everything was bad, and I was in dysphoria. And I was in the park, and another dad would come to me and say, "Hey, what happened?" It's like, "What?" You saw my face looked like I lost a precious family member. I was just walking the street like that. I was kind of like mourning. But why did this happen? I was listening to the scale. I was scaling the company just like the Americans taught me. But what happened was, when I scaled the company like that, I lost touch with the company. The few people that started the company at the beginning lost touch with the field. They lost touch with what meant to create value, because we scaled it and we built this machine, but the machine had no touch, and we didn't do it the right way. So who's the villain? Why did this happen? Who is the villain of the story? And to understand who's the villain of the story, we go back in time again. I'm 28, more hair, firmer skin, and I'm teaching a course, methods engineering, right? Just like I told you, I'm teaching the course at university, methods engineering, and I'm teaching a class about assembly lines. And this is actually something I used to say in the class. Imagine a shoemaker in the 18th century, one person, one pair of hands. He chooses the leather, cuts it, stitches it, fits it, repairs it. If something goes wrong, he fixes it. If something goes right, his name is on it. That was the way we manufacture product as humanity before the age of the Industrial Revolution. This person is called the artisan. The artisan is the person that he's got this workshop, and he knows a lot of things. He understands in leather and stitching and metal, and there's a lot of things that person knows in terms of making a shoe. And if you remember, our age, like we didn't grow up in this age, but probably your parents or your grandparents could have told you about products of super high quality that would never break. That was products manufactured by the artisan, but humanity wanted more. We invented the steam engine, and then the Industrial Revolution came along, and then Henry Ford came along, and then we had the assembly line that separates work into stations, and we grew productivity, and we reduced the price of the product down, and then we can all buy a lot of stuff that we don't need. But we all buy it, right? And that's a part of no, I'm kidding. A lot of it is really good, and it built companies, and it advanced humanity. But there's probably a price. Isaac Asimov wrote a short story called Profession. So Profession is somebody knows Profession from Isaac Asimov? He's a sci-fi. You saw the movie I, Robot with Will Smith, that robots are killing us? That's Isaac Asimov, okay? So he had a short story called Profession. It's a really cool story. It's a story my father used to tell me when I was a kid. And in this story, it's a futuristic society where people can go into a taping machine, and that taping machine gives you a profession within 2 minutes. So you go into the taping machine and says, you're going to be a lawyer. You go, basically, the Matrix did it as well, right? This was 1940 or something, okay, 1940. And the hero of the story, a character called George, he's very excited about his day of taping, so he's going to be taped, and then he's told that he's not going to be taped. He needs to go and study engineering the old-fashioned way 4 years. He's like, what? He needs to take the long road. And apparently in that society, the most creative people, the ones chosen to take decisions for the future of that society, those people are chosen to take the long road. They are chosen to get trained old-fashioned way. Years later, reality began to rhyme with that story. So in the age of Gen AI, when Gen AI comes along, we're like, wait a second, like, to me, it starts to, like, Asimov was kind of like on point. It's starting to get close. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm seeing how Gen AI helps me, and how I can write better, and I can do a lot of things that used to take me a long time, take me less time. I can do things outside of my remit. I can expand my range all of a sudden. And then I ask myself, if a tool like this reduces friction for one person, what does it do to a team? So if I can do a lot more things myself, and I work within a team, maybe, just maybe, we can challenge the assembly line model. Maybe all of a sudden, that model that we took for granted for so many years, we took it as a necessary evil. Like Rosh was talking about it before, we all have to wait, and you have to wait for the specialist. And us as knowledge workers, we also work with the assembly line model. Us as marketers, we work to assemble a big piece of work. It goes through many stations of speciality. So maybe now we can challenge that model. And then it felt like a genuine Eureka moment. When I was able to combine in my head Jimmy Butler, Positionless Marketing, from that game in the bubble in 2020, together with the rising of Gen AI, it felt to me like the notion of positionless marketing was born. That was the beginning. And then I started seeing it everywhere. Absolutely, Moti said. Paris Saint-Germain, their coach, Luis Enrique, came through Barcelona. They play that way. So in May last year, I was fortunate enough to watch the Champions League final in Munich. And as I started to think about positionless, I started to see it everywhere. I saw it in football, something called total football, where players play positionless. I saw it in martial arts. I saw it in basketball, of course. I saw it in music. I started seeing that this idea of versatility is something that's really out there for humanity. So this is a funny story. We go to the game, and it's Paris Saint-Germain versus Inter, and Moti, who's a colleague of mine, he's a huge football buff. It's like, Moti, who's playing today? Is there a team that plays total football? I really need it for my LinkedIn post. It's like, yeah, Paris Saint-Germain, they play because Luis Enrique came from Barcelona, and that's how they do it there. It's like, what about the other team? It's like Inter. Oh, it's like old school Italian, defenders never move, they stay back, it's like the structure, the machine. Italians, a really good team, but they play complete opposite. I was like, oh my God, I really need Paris Saint-Germain to win this game, otherwise I don't have a LinkedIn post. And they won 5-0. Creative copywriters who had never touched a CRM platform were now building journeys and analyzing performance. So this is from last year here. Rachel Parker from FDJ United stood on stage and gave us a keynote. And she talked about how they adopted the positionless marketing revolution. And the one thing I really loved about what she said, and she actually said it later in a podcast we did together, she talked about creative copywriters in her team were going into Optimove, doing analysis, building campaigns, something that was unheard of before. So this was a really cool example for me. We're getting close to the end. I began to suspect the opposite. So as I'm writing this book, something crazy happens in the world. There's a talk about AI, right? We all feel it today because I just finished this book like a month ago, and everybody's talking about Claude Code, and jobs are going to go away, what skills are going to get automated away. And software was always thought of something that can help us enhance our capabilities. All of a sudden, people talk about software replacing us, not enhancing our capabilities. But I saw the artisan. I saw that shoemaker basically being able to have many more skills and reclaiming human creativity. That's what I see. So I think this is our AI blueprint. This is how we can win in the AI age. We need to be more versatile, and we need to attack the assembly line. So if that is true, then the real pressure is not on talent, it's not on us, it's on structure. The real pressure is on the structure that we use to perform work. We need to adapt it, refresh it. We can still have an assembly line. They can be less departments, more flexible, faster. We need to skill ourselves up in a new way, and executives need to support us to do it. Executives need to allow for this new structure to come about. They need to be willing to let a copywriter run a CRM campaign. If they're not going to do that, then we cannot get to that stage. What if AI doesn't push us away from our humanity, but back towards it? This is what I believe. This is what I think will happen, and it's all in my book. So I'll be signing no, I'm kidding. This is just something something I found to be funny. one of my peers, she asked me to sign the book, so they took a funny picture, like it was 2 weeks ago. So yeah, but you all have in your goodie bag, you all have a copy of my book. It's 60-something pages. It's not that long. I tried, but it's not that long. So it's you can read it in like an hour and a half. So when you take and it's lots of stories. I hope it's engaging and fun. To sum up, let's just cover a few things about Optimove, the State of the Union. So this year in 2025, we were chosen to be a Gartner visionary again. We released Gamification, had a lot of momentum with it. Recently, we added loyalty to that. We expanded our channel investments, so a lot of capabilities around emails and push and web push and all of those channels. Major push into Gen AI and AI decisioning. We had strong ARR growth and 200 plus new logo growth. And lastly, we're now working on our largest acquisition ever, which is about to happen. So I'm giving you here a tiny preview. So it's a really exciting year for us. And thank you so much.